member. Today we have two topics. One is book discussion and the second is panel discussion. The book name is Nari Shakti, Women Take Center Stage. And after that we have a panel discussion on women as leaders, challenges and opportunities. We have distinguished guests on our panel, and I would like to introduce first the author and speaker of today's session, Dr. Ganesh Natarajan. He is the author of book Nari Shakti, Women Take Center Stage. Dr. Ganesh Natarajan is a visionary serial entrepreneur and thought leader in the field of dual intelligence, where he blends artificial intelligence with human intelligence to drive transformative business solutions. He is the co-founder of GTT, a company he built with his wife, Dr. Uma Ganesh, in 2011. Dr. Ganesh Natarajan has led GTT Data Solutions Limited, now listed on the Bombay Stock Exchange, to pioneer AI and data management solutions globally. With a strong academic foundation, including degrees from BIT Mesra, IIM Mumbai, IIT Bombay, and Harvard Business School, Dr. Natarajan's career spans over 25 years in leadership roles at AppTech and Zensar Technologies, where he drove significant growth and innovation. He has been honored with prestigious awards and recognition for his contribution to technology, entrepreneurship, and people-centric leadership. Alongside his corporate ventures, he has also co-authored and authored 14 books, held significant roles in organizations like NASCOM and TAI, and advocates for mentorship, self-confidence, and market-driven innovation. His mission is to ensure that businesses can harness the power of AI while keeping the human in the loop, aiming to establish GTT as a global leader in dual intelligence by 2030. I would like to extend a warm welcome to Dr. Ganesh Natarajan on behalf of AMA. After the address by Dr. Ganesh Natarajan, we have a panel discussion where we have a distinguished guest. I would like to introduce one by one Professor Indira Parikh. Professor Indira Parikh is the president of ANTARDISHA, Directions from Within. ANTARDISHA is a private entity creating a space for individuals, collectivities, organizations, and institutions to have a dialogue to discover themselves, to review their past, to reflect on the present, here and now, and renew themselves for the future. Professor Parikh is the founder president of Flame University Pune until 2015. She has been involved in creating the academic vision of holistic and liberal education and shaping Flame. She has also conceptualized the models of management development programs authored in Threshold of Life, Life Space and Workspace, and Life Roles and Identity. She was also the Dean of IIM Ahmedabad. Her focus is on transformation and lifelong learning, development, and growth. I would like to extend my warm welcome to Professor Indira Parikh. We have Mr. Arvind Thakur. Mr. Arvind Thakur is the Vice Chairman and Managing Director of NIIT Technologies Limited. He is a seasoned technology leader serving on the Board of Management at NIIT University, the Board of JK TechnoSafe Limited, and as a trustee of NASCOM Foundation. He has been the CEO, Vice Chairman, and MD of NIIT Technologies, now Coforge Limited, leading its growth into top IT services provider until 2019. A distinguished alumnus of IIT Kharagpur and IIM Mumbai, he has played key roles at NASCOM, National Skill Development Center, CII, and FICCI. With a career spanning leadership, entrepreneurship, and industry advocacy, he continues to contribute to the tech and education sectors. He is also actively involved in alumni initiatives at IIT Kharagpur. Passionate about innovation and skill development, he remains engaged in shaping the future of the IT industry. I would like to welcome Mr. Arvind Thakur to AMA. Now, I would like to welcome Professor Neharika Vohra from IIM Ahmedabad. Ma'am, it's been time to meet. I was with IIM Ahmedabad as a communication head, and I was interacting with Professor Vohra. Professor Neharika Vohra specialized in behavioral science and currently working as a professor in organizational behavior area at IIM Ahmedabad. She holds 2 postgraduate degrees and PhD from University of Manitoba, Canada. She was the first rank holder in graduation and post-graduation in India. Holds extensive experience with the corporate sector as an independent director, consultant, coach, and mentor. She has been involved with a large number of top companies in executive education. She has served as a chairperson of IIM Ahmedabad's doctoral program, now its fellow program in management. She was also the editor of Vikalpa, a leading journal publishing from IIM Ahmedabad. She has published over 70 peer-reviewed research papers and citation of over 3,000 in Google Scholar. She is top-level international and national journals and authored 3 books. On behalf of AMA, I am also welcoming Professor Neharika Vohra. Now we have a so our the entire book discussion and panel discussion is broadcasting on AMS social media, and we are thankful to IMA, All India Management Association, and local management association are also watching this live telecast. So on behalf of International Women's Day Month, I would like to welcome Professor Indira Parikh with a small token of appreciation. And also to Professor Neharika Vohra. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Ganesh Natarajan, the author and speaker of today's session. He will enlighten us with his thoughts. Sir, stage is yours.
Good evening, and first of all, thank you very much to AMA for giving me this opportunity to do this evening with you, all of you. I was telling some of the board, the trustees, that whenever I'm in Ahmedabad, I tell AMA I'm here. So if they need me to talk about anything, I'm happy to do that. And this is probably the 5th time I'm speaking at AMA over the last 30 years. So it's good fun. First of all, I think this is very much about women, this discussion. So I will make sure that this is an equal opportunity panel. So I will only speak for 10 minutes, and the 2 women will speak for 10 minutes. And of course, my friend Arvind will speak for 10 minutes. So overall, it's a 40, 45 minute and more, depending on what you want. But we'll make it very equal. So I don't want to make one long keynote speech or anything like that. But let me just give you an introduction to why this book. And before I do that, let me give you an introduction to why we do a lot of writing. This book is actually authored by the Pune International Center, which, I mean, is like the India International Center and so many others, is a think tank. And as a think tank, we do tremendous amounts of work in terms of research, in terms of publishing papers. We also do a very well-acclaimed annual event with the Ministry of External Affairs, which is called the Asia Economic Dialogue, just finished a couple of weeks back in Pune. And the basic idea is to further the body of knowledge in terms of thinking. And the concept of writing collaborative books actually started about 5 years back, and this was not even 5 years, 4 years back, when, as you remember, in the early days of COVID, China came and squatted on Galwan, and we had this big question mark, which even today is a question mark of, how much of Chinese occupation there is in the upper reaches of Ladakh, etc., etc. So that was a time when 6 of us, Dr. Mashelkar, who is the Padma Vibhushan president of PIC, Dr. Vijay Kelkar, who was a former finance secretary and is also a Padma Vibhushan and the vice president of PIC, me, Ambassador Gautam Bambawale, who had recently been ambassador to China and then he retired, and then a very eminent economist called Ajay Shah, whose family actually set up the Center for Monitoring Indian Economy, and Dr. Ajit Ranade, the group president and an advisor to the Aditya Birla Group, who then became the vice chancellor of Gokhale Institute in Pune. So 6 of us got together and said, let's look at what is the response, strategic response to China. And obviously the military response that India gave was pretty good. I mean, given the relative mights of the 2 armies, I think we did pretty well. But we said that's not going to be enough. I mean, even today, when you look at China's renaissance and the flood of currency going to China, you realize that it's not easy to vanquish China in any sense of image. So we really looked at it from how does one face up to China, not beat China, not stand up to China, but face up to China. And this book is written in maybe 12 dimensions. The principal ones among those are, of course, political, diplomatic, economic more than anything else. And we did this. And of course, this book was published and we got a very aggrieved call from the ambassador of China to India saying, how dare you people write this book? And this is not what China is all about. So we said, success. Somebody has noticed our book. Okay. We also got noticed by the Ministry of External Affairs and obviously, and the Ministry of, I think Finance. And since both of them are very close to Pune International Center, some of them, the secretaries talked to us and said, why don't you now write a book specifically about India and call it India's Pathways to Success? So they gave it the name, we wrote the book. And that was a runaway bestseller by Rupa. So it's one of those best-selling books of the last 2 years. And there we actually looked at India, not from a Viksit Bharat point of view, but over the next 4 years, that is up to 2030, what should we do again? Economically, sectoral, agriculture, manufacturing, defense, the whole works. And I really liked putting that book together. That was co-edited by not 6 people, but 2 of us, myself, and this gentleman called Ijaz Ghani, who has been a principal economist in the World Bank, primarily responsible for emerging markets. So that was great fun. That was about 2 years back. And then, of course, this whole idea of Nari Shakti came to the fore. And we've given this book a very different kind of approach. The idea being that we said, let us find people who are really doing extraordinary work in their own realm of activity as women and get their story into the book. So it is edited by me and my wife, Dr. Uma Ganesh, and we kind of wrote about 40% of the book and bringing our own experiences. And I'll end with a couple of my own experiences with women. But we also got, and we said, who has been one of the most accomplished corporate women in this country? So obviously the name came to mind was Arundhati Bhattacharya, who in the 200-year history of State Bank of India was the first chairperson. And she's written some very authentic, original stuff about what it took a woman to reach the highest echelons of State Bank of India, and in what used to be a largely male-dominated financial services environment. And that is an amazing one. So she's one. Then we got a couple of great success stories. A woman called Sushma Rajgopalan in the US, and a lot of people from India to write about their success stories in breaking the glass ceiling and so on and so forth. We also got an amazing social worker. I don't know how many of you have heard of an NGO called Educate Girls, which is probably the most funded NGO in India and works on putting tribal children back to school in the upper reaches of Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, and now Bihar. And Safina Hussain, who founded that, she's my hero. I mean, she's just amazing in terms of her vision, the clarity with which she approaches the problem. So she's written a full chapter on this. We also got a very young woman called Pooja Goyal. Pooja has been a serial entrepreneur, built and sold 2 companies, and is today the CEO of an entity called Udayati Foundation. Udayati is doing a lot of work on women's policy towards women. So she's actually very eloquent and makes a big point happen. Then we said, let's find a few people outside India. And I found a very young woman called Nikki Barua. Nikki, just to give you her background, I know her for the last 10 years. And because I met her in Guwahati when her father asked me to meet her because she's just finishing her graduation. And 10 years back, then she moved from, like many of our family members, moved from India to the US. Okay, and she started working in the US, became an entrepreneur, built a very successful technology company, sold that, and then decided to primarily work on women's causes. And her chapter is not really a chapter, her piece that in the book is quite amazing because she really talks about what it takes for a woman to succeed in corporate America. I mean, I see that playing out in my life because my daughter is a cancer scientist in Sloan Kettering Hospital in New York. And I know that when she started becoming very successful, she was the poster child of America in the sense that she was brown, she was a woman, she was young. So everything that Jewish America wanted from a New York point of view. Today she's successful, she's young, she's brown, she's a woman, and then she's finding what it takes to be successful in America. Not easy, okay? If you're up to a certain level, it's not a problem at all. It's a very, very equal country. But beyond that, if you got to really succeed in your life, it's not easy to be an immigrant. Okay? So it's very interesting. And Nikki actually then, to complete her story, met while she was working on women's causes, she met another woman called Monica Marquez. Monica is Mexican, okay? And I remember when I met her in Los Angeles about 4 years ago, she said, you got to come for my wedding. We're getting married in Mexico. So like typical male chauvinist man, I asked the next question saying, who's the lucky man? She says, no, I'm not marrying a man. I'm marrying Monica Marquez. Okay. So, I mean, it took me a minute to kind of jolt. Okay. And then her parents were there for the wedding from Guwahati. They're very, rural part of Assam. And it's absolutely wonderful. So they live very close to where we live in New York. And, it's a amazing story to see how successful they are. Today, they have an international portal on the web called Beyond Barriers. And Beyond Barriers is helping thousands of young women to find their own in life. So I won't go on and on. There are 14 contributors to this book, but I mean, do have a look at the book if you get a chance. And that was the idea. Most important, I think we also got a lot of people from different walks of life to talk about their experiences with women. So there are many men who have contributed to the book, including Dr. Mashelkar and Dr. Vijay Kelkar and quite a few others. Ajit Ranade is one, Ijaz Ghani is another. So different perspectives on what it takes for women to succeed. And we will, of course, discuss that in the panel that follows. But my own experience with women is that I remember, I mean, I started my career after finishing in what is now called IIM Mumbai, NIIT, in a very traditional manufacturing setup, a company called Crompton Greaves, and very, very male and hierarchy oriented, which used to happen in the 80s when I started working. And my first eye opener came when I joined NIIT, and in fact, Arvind was my boss in NIIT. And because it's a very open kind of company, in the sense that there is no difference, there's no equality issues between men, women, and it kind of opened my eyes. So when I then became CEO of this company called Aptech at the age of 32, I decided to pretty much implement all these good ideas. So we built a company where 72% were actually women, and almost 40% of the people in leadership were also women. Thank you very much. So this is how we started. And again, when I then moved from Bombay to Pune, Aptech, to a company called Zensar, which is part of the RPG group. Again, very typical environment. So I went there, and the first question I asked was, okay, how many women in leadership? And in the technology industry, I know how many of you are aware, it starts with 52%, because in your engineering colleges today, 50% are women, which is very good news. But it very quickly tapers off, because as women go into middle management, especially because of marriage, children, etc., they tend to drop out. So it becomes like maybe 30%. You go into top management, it comes down to, if you're lucky in an organization, it's 10%. You go to the board level, then you have this board representation for women. So you wonder what happens, okay? And I'll give you one anecdote. When I joined Zensar, out of 13 people in senior management, one was a woman. That was our company secretary, Asha. 3 months after I joined, she came and said, Ganesh, I'm leaving. I said, now what happened to you? She said, no, yesterday I went home. My mother-in-law told me that your son, her son is 7 years old, got only 97% in his math exam. If you had been staying at home like all the other mothers, he would have got 99%. So she quit. Can you believe it? No, I don't know whether to blame Asha, blame the mother-in-law, blame the environment. I don't know. But this is some reality of it. So I said, it was almost a jihad for me, saying that, look, in the next 10 years, we got to redress the situation. So I'm glad to tell you that when I retired from Zensar in 2016, out of 17 people in senior management, 13 were women. 13. Okay. And even today, the COO of Zensar is a woman. And we found that the whole organization felt much freer and was more evolved because of that. And even today, the company that my wife and I just listed on the Bombay Stock Exchange, 72% women. We have had 3 CEOs in that company. All have been women. So I'm now a great passionate believer in women. And somebody was asking me in Mumbai last Monday when I was speaking at this Shakti conference, saying that we believe that, you are an equal opportunity person. I said, no, I'm not equal opportunity. If there is an equally competent man and a woman in front of me, I will pick the woman anytime. Okay? And I'm not making it to make a political point. I just feel that a commitment that women have, whether it's in politics, whether it's in agriculture, whether it is in medicine, or for that matter in the corporate sector or social sector, is of an order of magnitude better. And which is why I believe that Nari Shakti, what you said, women take center stage, is, I think, critical to the success of ourselves as a nation. So this is my broad pitch on the book and what we wrote. So let me tell you what we'll do in this panel. I've requested each of the very eminent people here, and all of them are, I know very personally, because Indira Parikh, of course, needs no introduction. And with her career in Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, and she spent a few years in Flame in Pune, which is where we got to know her extremely well. And Neharika, of course, I mean, IIM Ahmedabad Center for Leadership Development, she really heads that. But again, spent a couple of years in Delhi as the Vice Chancellor of the Delhi Skills and Entrepreneurship University, with whom we had a partnership for setting up social centers all over Delhi. And Arvind, as I told you, is my first boss and continues to be a guru right now in golf, because he plays much better golf than I do. But apart from that, continues to be an extremely good friend. So we're going to get each one of them to talk for maybe initially 8 to 10 minutes each. And I'm going to request them to just talk about this topic a little, saying, what do they think the status of women in society, in corporate, or whatever. days? And where do you think we should go? What kind of challenges are there in the next, if we talk about a Viksit Bharat 2047, what should we do for women? What are the roadblocks and what are the opportunities? And then once they finish, throw it open to discussion with all of you, and then we'll close it from there. So thank you very much. Indira, can I please start with you? Your thoughts on, and including your wonderful book, Spaces of Leadership.
Thank you, Ganesh. I started my work with women as women to train them to get into higher position was in 1979 when I first did the Women Managers program in IIM Ahmedabad. It was called Women Managers Issues of Role and Authority. That was the name of the program. And nobody thought I should do. They told me the programs are calling women, but the women were not there in the program. So what I did was, finally they agreed that I could hold the program. So I went from company to company to company. Then they were personnel managers and not HR managers, and asked them, would you sponsor your women? And they were really shocked. They said, what, sponsor women for what? I said, training program in IIM. So they thought for a while and then says, it is because it is IIM and I don't have to think to men or women, so we will send. And luckily, I got 45 participants in that program. It's one of the highest numbers at that time. And 3 of them were standing at the threshold of going to the board, and they were hesitating to get onto the board. So in the program, we discussed that issue, and finally, all 3 of them went back and agreed to be on the board. Now, their fear was, if I get onto the board, I will be the only woman on the board. And then to be able to make a statement and to bring about a change would be very difficult. And sometimes, even now, I've been on several corporate boards. I've been the president of Flame, and there are times when I would say, what the hell is this happening? Because they're not, all men are not like that. But there was one member on the board who would ask questions about education, of liberal education, to a company. He was a CAO who was in the army and just a graduate, did not know L of liberal education, but the questions were addressed to him. And he did not have the answers. He fumbled and he fumbled. And I did not say anything. I said, that's his question. Let him answer it. I will not answer it. Now, he did not have the graciousness to ask me the question. So I did not reply. Finally, when he fumbled for about 5-10 minutes, then the chairman said, Indira, why don't you answer the question? I said, well, the question has been asked to him. Why would I answer? And that's the kind of game playing which goes on at times, which makes it difficult. Now, I can argue it out, I can fight it out, and I did argue it out later on. But this is what stops women, because when they experience these little subtle negativism, they don't want to respond to the challenges. I'll give you another example. About few months back, I was invited by a friend of mine who is the head of HR in a multinational company. She says, Indira, I have bought a flat, so why don't you come and be with me for one night? I want you to enter that home with me. So I went to Pune, and we went to the apartment which she had bought, and she had prepared one room with a bed and something which was given to me. And then a friend came, a lawyer friend who had helped her quite a bit buy the apartment and everything. And suddenly, I went to sleep at 9:30 because they both of them were talking. She came at about 3 o'clock in the room, and then in half an hour there was a phone call, which that lawyer said, get the hell out of my house, to both of us. 5 o'clock in the morning, I was quite troubled because I said, now where do I go at 5 in the morning? My flight is in the evening. So I have a friend in Pune, Anu. So I said, I will go to Anu's house. So I said, get me a cab. get me an Uber and I will leave. So I packed up my bag but the bag finally, but before they called a cab, that man sat down and told me what is happening and what is happening to her, because she was thrown out because she complained about some harassment which happened with the very top management. She just, they threw her out of the company. They threw both of them out. But 6 weeks later, they took the man back, but they did not take her back. And she was telling me, explaining to me what happens to a woman when this happens. And finally, at 5 o'clock, I think what went into his head, I think he was drunk. He had taken some alcohol at night, told us to get out. So I think these are the kinds of things which happen, which make women uncomfortable in accepting leadership positions. But when they do take leadership positions, they have to be very strong, and then they manage very well. I was 10 years as president in Flame, and I ran the institution, but my focus was the institution. And there were just too many responsibilities because we were starting the institution. The first time liberal education was not heard about in the country. There was no other colleges of liberal education. So people would ask all kinds of funny questions. Liberal education means, can they do anything what they want? Can they do run around as they want? I said, no, liberal education is a philosophy of education which is different from traditional arts, commerce, and science. It is something lot more holistic, and a child gets a very wide exposure. But they would ask such questions to me. Liberal means, do you give them freedom to do anything what they want? I said, no. And I'll give you an example of a student. She used to wear spaghetti strap t-shirts and hot pants in the college. And in the campus, there was a norm of dress code of how, when they came and how they went to the classroom, how they went to the when they came to the chairman and president's departments wing side. And one day I saw her in a salwar kameez. So I was a bit perplexed and I was looking at her, and she was begging with her eyes not to make a comment. So I kept quiet. Then her father, she was with her father. The father had come to see her. Then the father came to my office and says, "Madam, आपसे एक बात करूं?" मैंने बोला करिए. बोले यहाँ लड़कियां क्यों नंगी घूम रही हैं? Now I did not say your daughter is one of them. I said these are youngsters and this is the way people dress. नहीं नहीं मैडम आप इसको ये सब रूल बदल दीजिए. इनको अच्छे उनको कपड़े पहनाइए, नंगे मत घूमने दीजिए. And then this girl came after 2 years of graduation. She came to meet me in Flame, and I said, "How are you?" Then by then she was married. She says, "Ma'am, I'm married in Rajasthan and I'm wearing up to my chin gungar." I mean, look at the transformation. And Menakaki, you just do it. She says, "What can I do? I can't even wear a night dress in my own room. I'm not allowed. I have to wear a sari." वो नहीं आते एकता कि women wear with that jariyal sari go to bed. So she had to do that. And so the question is, when these women cannot go up very high because they are stopped by the family dynamics, they are stopped by the mother-in-law, they are stopped by the society around them, and therefore even if they're not allowed to do one step ahead, how can they get into leadership positions? Now when I was coming to IIM from my home, I was driving a car. They used to say ye pagal hai. And my husband didn't like driving, so he would sit next to me and I would be driving. All the more she's ye to pagal hai. उसके husband को गाड़ी नहीं चलाने देती है, खुद चलाती है. So all these kinds of comments were made, but this I'm talking about the 70s. So now I don't think, now the world has changed quite a bit. But there are many things which keep continuing, which inhibits the women to take on major responsibilities. And in about 80s, I did a research where I categorized women into three parts. Job-oriented women, they were happy being 9 to 6, taking the money home and making sure the children had good education. Their money was spent on children's education. Then there were professional women, career women who were these very competitive, highly competitive, um, all these professional management schools and IIT schools coming out. And most of them, quite a few of them were not married. They would not marry because even now, women after education want to work because they don't want to marry. In the book I have written, in my leadership book right now, there were many women who said, "Humko kaam karna hai," that would protect us from getting married. Because once you get married, the whole social oppression starts. And that has not changed much in generally, it might have changed, but if you look at individual homes, it is very difficult for a woman to say, "I'm going to work," and then come back and not be able to go to the kitchen and start cooking for the whole family. I mean, this is the pattern. Once they become very senior women, professional women, they can create an equilibrium between their home and their work, and they are very highly professional. And there's three categories of women. Some The career women can get up to senior management or at the senior level. Professional women can get up into leadership roles, but they don't want leadership roles. I had interviewed a lot of people in the public sector, and they said they don't want to become leadership role because it's too much responsibilities, too many nights out, too many parties. And if the husband is retired, it's worse, because then the husband is home and she is going out to functions and events and being called for giving talks, etc. It becomes very difficult. They don't want to get into all of that. But once they break through this inhibition, internal inhibition, because there are two kinds of inhibitors for women. One is an external inhibitor, which is from the society, from the organization, etc. And one is internal. One, they struggle and break through the internal and take the first step to take a decision for themselves. Okay, this is my decision, this is what I want to do. They can rise to the leadership role, because then slowly and steadily they build up their own space, they build up their own voice, they build up their own perspective. They have a philosophical viewpoint, they have a perspective, a much larger perspective, and they have a larger vision of the institution they are a part of. So these are the transformations I have seen over the years from 1979 to now. The first program was 79. And then I did lots of programs in Africa, and then Southeast Asia. From the Commonwealth Secretariat, we did programs for women. In India also we did programs. And the example is just the same. What the woman wants and what the society wants, they are in clash. And in many programs, I started to do a role play where I had a group of women who were representing self and asked them what the self wants. And when they spoke, they had aspirations, they had ambitions, they wanted to work, they wanted to travel, but they could not do so because the barriers were the family, the work organization, the structure of the organization, the social system, the society around them, and children made them feel guilty if they worked, because most women did not work around them. And the children would make them, and they carried so much guilt. It was difficult to help them release themselves from the guilt they carry of working, and the guilt was always about children. How do you and the children will tell them, see, you are working, therefore I'm like this. You are working, therefore I'm like this. And they could manipulate the children and play the women's havoc in their minds because what the children said and did. So what needs to be done is mostly to prepare the children, and also the larger part of the families. See, yes, last week I was in Missouri, and we were part of the roundtable conference on creating safe places, safe environment for women to work. And there, most people said, okay, instead of providing training programs to women, you must provide training programs to the families, especially the mother. Counseling, coaching must be done to the family members at home, including the husband, about to let the women work, to let them do this, to let them do that. Now, the only way I could handle my mother-in-law by because I was working, I used to bring her to IIM, to my programs, and say, "This is what I'm doing." Finally, she recognized what I was doing. So, convocation I would bring, especially when I was the PGP chair. I used to lead the procession for the students for the convocation. That is the time I used to bring her and see, "This is what I'm doing, and this is where I've reached." And that made her understand and stop mm, criticizing me. Okay, you just go to work and you are not available, etc., etc. So I've said you include the family to what you are doing and help them see. Now we have in the World HRD Congress, we have started 50 awards for women in education. And after about, this has been about 6-7 years now the women are saying, yeah, because I got the award, my uh, respect in the society has gone up so much, because people say, no, no, she's doing something worthwhile. So they have to be recognized for what they are doing, and the recognition must reach the outer spaces of home and family, etc., where they realize that women are doing something meaningful, something important, and contributing to the society. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. That was really, truly wonderful. And I think when I mentioned my company secretary, Asha, it kind of epitomizes the conflict that Indiraji talked about between the work and the home and the children, etc. So absolutely amazing. I'm going to move to Arvind. Arvind, your own experiences, your own thoughts.
Okay. अब ठीक है? All right. So, well, I've thanked you enough 3 times. But let me first thank also AMA for giving me this opportunity to interact with all of you, and to Ganesh for a lovely round of golf this morning. And I think this trip to Ahmedabad has been most enjoyable. What a beautiful course you have at the Kalhar Blues. Lovely course. I think it's one of the finest in the country. Would encourage a lot more golfers to come to Ahmedabad. But on the subject, I think as Professor Parikh has pointed out, women leaders in particular navigate through a very unique set of challenges. And I think she quite nicely elaborated on the social and cultural barriers which has been there for many, many years. So, that is fundamental to the challenges which women encounter. But she also talked about the workplace biases and discrimination, which also is something that women need to overcome, unfortunately. But that's the reality, and it's not something that's going to go away overnight. But I think from the 70s to now, things have improved quite significantly. Although I think there is still a lot more on this journey that we need to traverse. And then, of course, balancing work and family affairs, where I think women have probably a disproportionately significantly larger responsibility in dealing with family issues than men have, which put them to a significant disadvantage. So I think these are some very, very significant challenges which women have. But I think things are changing, and there are now opportunities which are emerging. Most significant is the fact that people are beginning to recognize the distinctive value which women bring to the workplace. Ganesh talked about his company where there was only one female in the leadership team, and over a period of time he changed it to 13. Did you say 13 out of 18? 18. Huh? That's a large team that you had, Ganesh. But anyway, when I was CEO, I had 4 women leaders in my team. My team was small, 8 only. So 50% were women. The head of HR, the head of finance, the CFO, the head of marketing, and one business unit, which was the business process outsourcing unit. And I can say, with absolute authority and confidence that the value which they brought besides their knowledge of the subject and the functional area, that they were engaged in was their personality and, the empathy that they brought about in the conduct of their affairs, which actually developed me as a leader. And, if I were to look at my leadership style, I would describe it as being a compassionate leader. And a good part of that would be from what I learned from my senior colleagues in the way, they dealt with situations. And I think that empathy which women bring in the leadership team is something which is unique. And what I realized was that in an organization, you're dealing with people. And even when you're talking about your customers and you're selling things to them, customers are not buying just your product or your service. They're buying the whole experience, right? The brand that you're trying to build in a company is you're creating a real experience for your customer. And when it comes to understanding experiences, women excel, because they deal with emotions, they think through feelings as compared to men, who tend to be much more rational. So, that's a big value that they bring. And I think that's getting recognized. And that is why we are beginning to see more and more women, move into leadership positions. The second thing which I'm seeing is in the, startup community. Actually, if you look at traditional organizations, there are less women leaders. But if you look at the startup ecosystem, you'll find the leadership team has got far more proportion of women as compared to the traditional organizations. And also, in India, we're beginning to see founders who are also women. And I was actually quite surprised to learn that the proportion of founders in the startup ecosystem in India who are women is second only to the United States. Did you know that, Ganesh? I saw this little statistics. US number one, of course, far significantly more in proportion, but India number two, followed by UK. That's an interesting data point, which I came across. So that's also an opportunity, women entrepreneurship. And of course, this is being led by the recognition that women are important in the workforce, and there are government incentives as well as corporate policies, which are supporting that. And I think women should take advantage of all this. And I would call that as very significant opportunity. Now, in the recent past, technology is now becoming a great opportunity because I think COVID has taught us that you can work from anywhere. And so, if you have family responsibilities and other things, you can work from home. To my mind, that releases a lot of burden from women, who have to commute, deal with family affairs, commute to work, get back, try to do many things. If you can do it from home, nothing like it. You can deal with your personal as well as professional issues using technology. So, these are 3 or 4 things which I thought were important from the perspective of opportunities, which women should take advantage of. Now, at least in my experience of working closely with women leaders, what I found are that there are certain traits which women need to overcome to progress in their careers. Now, I'm sitting among some very distinguished professors, and I may be putting my neck into a little noose over here, but I think, women, and I've seen this from experience, they tend to stick to their zone of comfort. So, you'll find successful HR leaders, marketing leaders, finance leaders as women, because they tend to specialize and they're happy in that zone of comfort rather than experimenting things beyond their zone of comfort. So I would really encourage women to start looking at issues and things which take them beyond their zone of comfort if they want to really, you know, build on their career. So that was one observation that I have. Second is, unlike men, who don't mind taking claim to, success, women, they feel somewhat shy to say, I've done a great job. They expect others to recognize it on their own and give them, that benefit. There's absolutely no harm in taking claim, but perhaps, that's their upbringing or personality which prevents them from doing that, which makes, men a little more successful than others. Now, in building your career, what we've seen, and I think it's universal, that very often it's not what you know and how much you know, but who you know which makes all the difference. And therefore, building relationships are extremely important. Now, we've seen, or at least I have seen, women good at developing and building relationships, but not so good in terms of leveraging those relationships. So they're hesitant to ask. That seems to be another trait which I think women perhaps need to work on. And then there is this, what should I say, disease to please. They want to please people. So sometimes when things become difficult and, you feel that, oh, guy will be a little unhappy if I give him negative feedback, there seems to be some hesitancy in doing that. Also, at times, now I'm just talking about from experience, so they tend to expose too much, sometimes it's good to be, less verbose or less emotional than exposing yourself completely, because that makes you completely vulnerable to, many other things that happen in organizations. And last but not the least, there is this thing, which, when you have to bounce back from a failure, you tend to brood, brood, uh, think too much about it, rather than, I'm just comparing it to, male colleagues, who, if you fail, just push it aside and get on with it. But, women tend to brood a lot about it, and then they get upset, and, that affects their, impacts them quite a bit. So what I really wanted to just bring out was that while, of course, uh, the environment, the organization, everybody needs to work towards dealing with the challenges which women had, which are purely social and cultural. I think women also need to work on themselves and, address these issues headlong. And it'll be good to have that discussion in this panel and with all of you to see how can women, take the step by themselves to deal with some of these challenges.
No, no, thanks, Arvind. I think you brought out a very lot of relevant points on what sometimes inhibits women themselves. And I was just thinking while you were talking about women, so many women entering entrepreneurship and doing startups today, that if you're a young lady with the noodle straps had decided to do a startup rather than getting married into a traditional Rajasthani Haveli, maybe she'd be happier. I don't know. So it's a question of personal choices. Neharika, you're the leadership boss. Please go ahead.
All right. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak. And when you come last, you either have nothing to say or you have a lot to disagree with. And I'm going to disagree. Actually, based on research, experience, and a lot of work that I have been doing. It seems like a very good thing to say that there are lots of women who are in startup. I have numbers because I've done some research on it. 18% of Indian startups have women founders. Just 5.5% of the total funding goes to companies with women as founders and co-founders. And for companies with only women founders, this percentage drops to 2%. And this is data from 3 days ago. Yeah, so I'm not making this up, and we can, I can substantiate it. So there is, I mean, and this is just for the startup data. The women leadership data also reads very poorly. There's all kinds of data that doesn't support the fact that we've made progress. Yeah, yes, we have made progress. Yes, there are possibly fewer girls who are accepting that after they have studied they are going to go into a house where they have to wear a ghungat of this kind, and so on and so forth. We've all made those strides in our lives, but at the same time there are multiple things that are at play, and it is a lot more complex than this. It is very easy for a man to sit up and say, and I'm not saying you particularly, but for us, for somebody to say, look, you should be very confident about your competence, yeah, or your achievement. There is enough research to show that the competency likability or the competency warmth dynamic does not work the same way for men and women. Yeah, if you're competent and warm, that's perfect. That's how leaders should be. You should be competent and warm. That's exactly where we want to be. But imagine a woman who's really competent. She's not seen the same way. Imagine a woman who's really warm. She's also not seen the same way. I'm too much of a mother if I'm warm. I'm too much of a bitch if I'm competent. Yeah, and if I'm competent and warm, people don't know what to do with me. Yeah, so that's the reality. And I'm not talking about myself. I'm talking about that's the reality for women. And therefore, I think it's easy for us to say, look, you should, stand up and say, but imagine when a woman really stands up and talks about her achievements, people say, well, you should be modest. Yeah, where is your modesty? Yeah, and this is not only in India, this is across the world. Yeah, this is not just for India. So I think it's we all walk almost like on a tripwire, right? You do this, it's not good enough. You don't do this, you're not good enough. I have had colleagues, women colleagues, who have said, I'm for this last month not been paying attention to my child because I've been really busy with something that matters at work. And I've seen people's faces like, yeah, they don't say it, what kind of a mother you are, yeah, but it's written on their faces. When a man says, look, for the last 1 month, I have had no time to go home, or I've not been doing this, everybody's like, that's perfect. But children at home require both mother and father. Right? And it is okay for a mother to sometimes not be fully available, and it's okay for a father not to be fully available, because no child or no family requires 100% for every time. But at the same time, we hold people to different standards, and that is why women, even when they do commit more than what they need to for work, they also hide it, because when they do it, it is often seen in a certain way. Also, she has to leave. It's okay. It's okay. Also, I think with women, there is an easy acceptance of low expectations. So, for example, if as a woman I say in my family, look, I'm having a difficult time adjusting, or the child is not studying, and so on and so forth, everybody says, "Theek hai, take a break." Yeah, the same is not told to a man. If the man says, look, I'm having difficulty adjusting, or my children are suffering, their education is suffering, everybody says, please hunker down, keep doing. There's somebody at home who can take care of it. So there is a tyranny of low expectations. When I was at the SCU, I would always say we have a tyranny of low expectations from people who are not very rich. We also have the same tyranny of low expectations from women. Right? And if everybody in the world tells you it's okay, don't be ambitious, don't do this, don't do that, it's very easy to take a break when you could have actually just put yourself down and gone further with it. And I can give you many examples of where the tyranny of low expectations actually makes a difference. Yeah. I also want to say that, there is a narrative, and that narrative is done out of good faith. I think people who are very men and women who are very open-minded will say this, that women are special. They bring something special to the table, right? Now, I have a difficulty with that, right? We are 50% of the population. There are good and bad women. There are women and men with normally distributed capabilities. There are women who are very good at managing emotions. There are men who are very good at managing emotions. There are women who have no clue how to manage emotions, and there are men who have no clue how to manage emotions. When women are already burdened with this, that women are special, right? One, I feel almost that I have to do it. So there is a extra care burden that women take at the workplace, caring for the men, caring for the situation, caring for other women, caring for this. Why do I need to take this burden? I'm doing it at home. I have to do it at work as well, right? So that is one thing. Like if there's a meeting that's going on and somebody is coughing, yeah, very often a woman will get up and try to give water. Right? Men can also look at it, and they can also give water to that man, to whoever is coughing. So again, there's a thing. The problem with women, a special narrative also is that when they trip and when they make a mistake, and they are bound to make mistake, especially when they're visible and when they're doing all of that, they are put to special scrutiny. They are held to different standards. Look, men and women both make mistakes, but when a woman makes mistake and she's already saddled with this, you have to be special, you are special, you have different skills, you have different things. When she fails, she has nowhere to hide. There's no place to hide, because people are watching her. People are watching her. I mean, we've seen that in public spaces. All the women who have been successful and they've made a mistake, they have been held to different levels of scrutiny and different levels of criticism as compared to men. I'm not naming names. I'm sure you all know who I'm talking about. So this is something, again, that I think, again, as women, we get set up to fail. We get set up to either extremely low expectations or extremely high expectations. I simply can't be normal. Why can't I just be normal? I also go and do my work. The one other thing that I want to talk about, and I can talk about this for ages, and also being a professor, you can always just hold the mic and speak all the time. I think, and so therefore I will limit myself. I think one of the things is that I completely agree with you, Arvind, that a lot of women are not able to achieve positions of responsibility because they simply do not have enough godmothers and godfathers. How does one develop godmothers and godfathers? I think that's a whole process that is, sorry, take care. That's again something that we can talk about for a long time, but it's an extremely important process. That how does one, I mean, I can't tell somebody, please be my godfather, right? If I'm not getting a position of responsibility, irrespective of my merit, irrespective of what I have done, irrespective of something, what do I do? How? I just think, I was just speaking to a student of mine just now. Women also have a very interesting thing, right? So when you're young, you're not taken seriously. When you're middle-aged, yeah, you might have some level of interest. As you get older in the system, you become irrelevant. Yeah, men don't become irrelevant. Older men are offered more positions of responsibility. Older women are seen as, nahi, ab inko, she won't have energy, or I don't know what they think. I have no clue. But the fact is that you're not offered. You become very quickly irrelevant. You're not seen as wiser. You're not seen as somebody who's experienced. You're seen as somebody who should retire soon. And you become invisible. A lot of older women talk about invisibility. They're just invisible in the system. They're just invisible. You're no longer the pretty person. You're no longer the most attractive person. You're no longer somebody who, and I'm sorry I'm bringing all of this up, but that is one of the realities that exists. The last thing I will say, I was doing a program, just like Indira was sharing about her women leadership programs. I was doing a program for women leaders. I will not name the company, but it is one of the largest IT companies in the country. They were looking at women who were, who were IITs, graduates, and so on and so forth, but they had not gone to the top, right? And so this program was meant to sort of jog them on the way to the top. So one of the assumptions was that something was wrong with these women, so let's train them, maybe they'll become better. That itself is an assumption that we have to worry about. The second thing was that at this meeting, at this inauguration of the program, the leader of the organization was there. He was there on a video conference, and the women all, said whatever, and he made a speech, and one woman raised her hand and she said, "Sir, you've said all the right things, but can you tell us what is it that you think women are good at, right? What is it that you think that, we are very, that we are good at?" And you will not believe me, I'm not telling this, I mean, it's a truth. He fumbled, he hemmed and hawed, and he said, some women are also good at technology. Yeah, this is a tech company. And I had no, my face was ashen. What am I going to talk about? And on one hand, you're saying we are supporting you to leadership positions. On the other hand, the leader of the company has nothing to say about what women are good at. Yeah. In that same program, we were listening to what some of the women were saying, the elder women were saying, the people who had not been, who had been passed up for promotions, and so on and so forth. One of the women shared something that I can never get off my, my visceral being. She said, one of my team members who was constantly going and looking out for girls for marriage. So I once asked him, what are you looking for? ऐसा भी क्या देख रहे हो तुम? Yeah. He said, I know what I definitely don't want. So she said, what do you don't want? He said, I don't want a mother-in-law like you. He's saying this to his boss. Yeah. Now, I don't know what the whole context is, but imagine you get negated for who you are. Yeah. That's not an easy battle to fight. I mean, how do you feel even valuable when somebody does? So that's the toxicity that one faces. Obviously, I dim myself. Obviously, I think, I should not show my competence. Obviously, I think I have to, just pass by and all of that. So again, I think not any one of us can fix it, but I think we all have to at least accept that there is a bias. We have to accept that there are certain realities that exist, and we need to fight it, and we need to, go towards possibly creating an environment where maybe it is not equal, but it is equitable. Yeah. And the last thing I will say is that, while it is very okay, I mean, even as somebody who's, who I think I have the best of a lot of things, yet I don't think my family would completely accept if I said, I'm just going to do some masti. I have no work. Yeah. I'm just going to loiter. I'm just going to relax. I'm just going to go somewhere and loiter and relax. Right? Women have no space or no permission or no acceptance for loitering and relaxation. Right? I have to always have a reason why I'm going out. I always have to have a reason as to why I'm going to do something. And I think as men, you don't recognize how much that privilege is and what it contributes to the growth of that person and the networks that they do. So again, all I'm bringing to light are there are challenges, we can work on it, we can accept it, and we can make them different. So thank you very much.
Fabulous, Neharika. My God, I've got so much inputs today that I haven't had for the last 20 years of my career. So quite interesting. Any comments from the audience? Comments, questions, anything that comes to your mind, feel free, because this is, I don't think you'll get such an eclectic panel again. Sir, I'm expecting to ask the first question. Any thoughts on what she said, I mean, in terms of what really limits women with? What do you say about bias? Bias? Yeah, what What is your view, sir?
Yes, I would agree to certain things that you said, that equal opportunities don't exist at times. At this stage of life, I'm on a different level, but when it was my first job, like I went to do a job at a company called Anagram Finance, and it was my first year, and I was learning about insurance. So we were on that summer trainee thing, and with me there were other two male colleagues. So they got the opportunity to go on the bike with the senior people for assessments and stuff. Whereas I had to sit on the computer and find out what percentage we are allocating to whom. So one day I went there and I asked that, I also want to go on the field trip. So I was told that, no, it's okay. I think you are better on the computer. So it was a time, I think that was probably 95, 97. But me today being a founder in a top position at a company, I backstabbed. One of my manager came to me one day and he is like saying that, ma'am, we need to hire somebody, one more person in QC. So I said, okay, put up let's hire one more person. We already have a QC head who's a female. But ma'am, I want a male this time. I said, oh, you were coming to a woman head and you were asking me that you want a male who wants to be a QC head. So I said, why? रात को नाइट शिफ्ट नहीं करते हैं. I said, okay, validated point. Then anything else? मैम ओवर टाइम के लिए बोलते हैं तो भी नहीं रोकते हैं. Okay. मैम मैटरनिटी लीव पे चले जाते हैं. Okay. So all the points that were brought to my attention by the manager, even being a woman, I could understand why he wanted to hire a man. But I think, at these stages of life, we need to accept that we need to give those liberties to women, but yet hire them to come out and, prove themselves. And because for the 8 hours they work, they really work very hard. So, yes.
Yes.
I think we discussed all these biases and constraints. So that's reality, right? The question I think is, how do we deal with these situations?
Yes.
Right?
And
I mean, deal with
as
situations
you,
in the-
sir, as you also made the point that there are only few departments where you see the women and then you don't see. Like in my company, in operations or in sales team, I have no females over there because they are not ready to go on the field and work in the odd hours. And as she said, that they have all these problems I do also face in my company. So
But also that is gender by design, right? How can you create opportunity? How can you create conditions in which these women will actually work?
correct.
And if you ask sometimes, they will be ready to do it. Sometimes somebody's never asked them. And it is also almost like, ye to mere liye hai nahi. Yeah. And also, as there are men who don't want to do this, there are women who don't want to do this. So look for those women who want to do it.
No, I myself go. So you are right. I myself. Yeah.
Sure. So it's not that we don't have them. It's just that we're not looking for them.
Also in these situations, like for example, we were discussing to network, you have to go party, you have to go to functions, and so on and so forth. Gets late, becomes difficult. We've had women, who have come up with these issues, and I've advised them. I said, listen, if you have to go for this function, go early and come out early. And in fact, if you go early, you meet the host and have a better relationship and interaction. And they start doing that.
Correct. So
Right? You don't have to stay till 12 o'clock, while everybody's drinking. You have to meet the host, meet a few people who are there. You'll have a better interaction and come away.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
I just want to make an observation, and that observation is cheap and down. I have been to AMA many talks and so on and so forth. I've never seen such a sparse audience. I wonder if it's because of the topic as well.
There's a Monday.
No, I've been here on many weekdays. I always find AMA has a lot of audience. And why is it that it's
Bustling
such...
with people.
Yeah, but even we are surprised.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Even I'm
And so
very
I think it's important for us to also think about it as an organization.
Professor Wood, I would like to make a comment on this. Not about why we have a less audience. I was discussing with Dr. Vilasa Salai, she is the World Bank Forum, and she was telling that nowadays social media and domestic violence are taking a very huge perception about creating women responsible, women from behind men's suicide basically. So recently we had a case in IT company in Bangalore, Ahmedabad. So any take on this, why people are taking wrong perception about whatever the incident was. But any key elements, do we have any research on this?
I don't know about research, but I'm really sorry that again, um, you know, either we make them as devis or we make them as villains. Normal human being rakho na.
Correct.
Yeah, and I think that's the whole point. Too much responsibility either way, or too little.
But I've had a very interesting question. We were doing the session in Hyderabad about 3 weeks back. And a woman got up and asked this question saying that, look, can you please tell the government of India to cut the maternity leave back from 6 months to 3 months? I said, why? He said, look, so many of my colleagues are not getting employed because of this inherent feeling that men have that we hire this woman, especially if she's in her early 20s, she'll get married, she'll have children, they'll be discontinued for 6 months to another 3 months leave without pay. It's very interesting, the kind of perception that, and I can say for a fact that yes, people do think twice before hiring a woman in their 20s because of this. So sometimes, all these environmental issues also come in the way of creating either conscious or subconscious biases. Something that you need to be. Your social media point is very well taken. I completely agree.
I want to say one thing. See, pregnancy is such a planned thing. And organizations plan for all kinds of things. And maximum you'll have to plan for twice. So I really don't understand what the issue is. Right? Everybody has slumps in their careers, right? Father will fall ill, you'll have to have, and it's unplanned. ये तो planned है, इसको हम नहीं अगर कर सकते, तो what is the big, what are we really talking about?
Very well said.
Yes.
But try telling it to all the men.
It's a planned thing.
I think she has a point to make. Of course. And the point that organizations have to deal with this reality. That there will be pregnancies. Right? So how do you make it comfortable for the woman to deal with that?
And for the men also.
Foreign is giving paternity leave as well. No?
Yeah.
For many,
No, but you'll be
3 months to both.
No, but you'll be surprised. Like in my daughter's lab, for instance, she was back in her lab 1 week after delivering her son.
Oh.
There's no concept of maternity. It is there's no government rule. So the organizations have to decide. So it's a very different kind of environment. So very difficult to say whether we are doing the right thing or not wrong. Yes.
But you know what the Americans and organizations are doing? They're asking the woman to freeze her egg. And then when she is free, then they can have she can get the baby out. It's such a humiliating thing to do.
Yes. No, but I think the important thing is how do we change the social fabric? If you ask me, the social fabric has to start changing in families. So, for example, the stereotype roles that boys and girls have, can families start working and bringing about that change so that, when they go to life, responsibilities are divided. I think they have to start from there, right?
There's a company in Japan. I was on on their boards. In Japan, they take women who are 35. They ever had children. And because after the World War, the men died, a lot of men died in Japan. So the women became widows. So they made it a point to give work to women. And their whole company has women employees. But they take them when they are 35, they've had their children, and they are in school. So and also I think our late marriages are becoming creating a lot of conflicts. Because by the time you marry late, then you have a child. That is the time when you are on the peak of your growth of your career. That is the time the child arrives. Then it doesn't work. There's an immense amount of
So
stress.
this kind of change has to come in the organization. That maternity should not impact the woman's career. Right? So one aspect is from the organization. The other aspect is from the family itself. How do they jointly take the
That's
responsibility
right.
to deal with this phase in life? So it has to happen for both ends.
True. If and India is possible for the families to support and look after the children.
Any concluding thoughts?
Spoken much.
Yeah, please. Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ganesh Natarajan, Professor Indira Parikh, Mr. Arvind Thakur, Professor Neharika Vohra, for enlightening us with your thoughts and insights. The book is available outside on the table, so in case if you are interested, please have a look at it and you can buy it also. Thank you so much on behalf of AMA. Thank you so much all the dignitaries and distinguished guests for coming. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, of course. Thank you.
Thank you.
Neharika, I asked a good
Yes, yes.